We are talking today about how policing in the Fort Wayne Police Department has taken on an additional philosophy of engaging with the community, and why that occurred, why it's important to the police department, and why it's important to what we do here at Trinity English in our city ministry. Hi, Cindy. I'd like to introduce you today to Captain Kevin Hunter. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Darcy Robbins and Samantha Taylor. And our intern for the HART program, Maddie Rohrbacher. Thank you for being here. We've gotten to know these folks pretty well over the past year plus because they are a weekly presence with us on Wednesdays during our street outreach on first, second, and fourth Wednesdays of the month, and then also across the street at the Fort Wayne Public Library for the Handing Out Hope event on Wednesdays from 11 to 1 also, where free meals are served and provided by the HART team in relationship and in cooperation with Same City Food Truck, Just Neighbors, Family Shelter, and any other sources I'm overlooking.
Connect and Project Me and Positive Resource Connection.
That's right. Well, last week, many of you were here when we had Positive Resource Connection and Project Me here, and they really represented their purposes, I thought, beautifully. So also then Connect Allen County, and actually the speaker that we had on schedule for next week was from Connect Allen County, but her position is changing and she's moving to a different program. So we will be talking more about Connect Allen County as a huge, helpful community resource that we use every single day. So one of the things that I'd like to introduce as we begin our discussion today is I'd like, if we can, to try to gear our questions and thought processes around this, the HART program for Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the larger program for the state of Indiana. If we can kind of gear our thinking to Fort Wayne for today. And we will have questions at the end. So if you can, write your questions down as we are engaging now, and then we will address those at the end if that's all right. Okay? So I'd like to begin with Captain Hunter. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Dana.
Can you tell us a little bit about how in the history of policing in Fort Wayne, it was determined that the HART program was necessary?
That's a great question. So I've been with the Fort Wayne Police Department for 33 years now. I took over Vice Narcotics in 2012, and the end of 2014 is when we saw the opioid crisis really take off. We saw a huge increase in opioids to the point where in December of 2014, we intercepted 8 kilos of heroin that was destined for this area. So that really told me, hey, this is a huge problem, and we're probably going to see more and more of this. 2015, we saw heroin and fentanyl being mixed together, and we saw an increase in our overdoses and overdose deaths. And it has just continued from there. We started working with the health department, the Lutheran Foundation, the courts, and different entities in this area to figure out what is our best course of action to really address the opioid crisis here, because it was not slowing down. So this group initially was called the Mayor's Task Force on Opioid Strategic Planning, and then it changed to FATOS, which I always struggle with this. It's Fort Wayne Allen County Task Force on Opioid Strategic Planning. Yeah, it's a mouthful,
doesn't it? Yeah.
But this group involved city, county, treatment providers, anybody that had anything to really do with helping people got together, and we had many, many meetings, and we figured out what is our best course of action? And we came to the conclusion of creating a mobile intervention team. What I mean by that is Parkview Hospital committed to hiring peer recovery coaches. The Fort Wayne Police Department committed to having detectives go out with those peer recovery coaches. And Lutheran Social Services committed to providing wraparound services. And Purdue Fort Wayne Community Research Institute committed to administering or helping administer that grant. So we applied for a grant through Indiana Department of Mental Health and Addiction, and we received that grant. I think it was for $1.3 million to start. That really kicked things off. So that would have been, we started the program in 2019. The two detectives went through peer recovery coach training along with the Parkview peer recovery coaches, and we started going out and talking to people after they overdosed. Initially, we thought we're going to get lots of doors slammed in our face. But what we found was we'd knock on a door and someone would say, you know, I really want help, I just don't know how to get help. So it was very helpful having all of the connections that we already had with treatment providers and others in the community to help people get connected to treatment. So far, since the program started, we've only had 2 doors slammed in our face, which is, to me, that's amazing. But it also tells me people really want help, they just don't always know how to get it. So the program has been really successful. I think we're over 1,000 people that we've contacted since we first started, and we estimate that about half of those have been connected to some kind of treatment services. And my detectives, who I wish they were here today, but they couldn't make it, they consider themselves the concierge of treatment services. So it's not, here's what I think you should do. It's, what do you want to do? What sounds good to you? We're here to help, and we have lots of options. So we have lots of connections. Fort Wayne Recovery is a great one. Avenues Recovery is another. Parkview Behavioral Health is another. Maple Heights, who just opened. So we have many, many providers in this area that we didn't have when the opioid crisis first hit. So we're very, very fortunate in that. And then as we're creating this program, we started thinking, you know, having social workers with us would really be a great thing. And so we wrote another grant, and as a result hired Sam and Darcy to help connect the police officers and the social workers on those really problematic cases that both have substance use disorder and mental health issues. And it has just really worked very, very well. Did that answer your question?
In part.
Okay. Okay.
Responding to that rapidly increasing need to try to prevent people from dying.
Yes.
Sound familiar to last week? So as we're talking about being a non-threatening presence so that people in our community don't slam doors
Yeah.
when we want them to get well, find healing, find hope. Darcy and Sam, can you talk a little bit about the role of being a presence as a social worker in the police department and what that brings in developing and keeping and growing relationships in the community so that this program continues to thrive?
That's a really good question. So I'm going to try to break it down a little bit in chunks. So I think something that Sam and I can bring to the table, especially with the detectives, I'm going to talk about the heart side and then the department as a whole. We really work well with the guys and we complement each other. So if the guys don't know an answer, then we can help go out with them. If there is you need me to stand up? Is it because I'm short? Is that a short joke, Sylvia?
It better not be, he's my husband.
Sylvia? That's a short joke. I see. Okay. So, you're going to see my
We may have words.
So, like I was saying, we help the guys by going out with them if there is a mental illness or mental health associated with the substance use disorder that they're seeing. So if somebody is actively suicidal or actively in a psychosis or just really needs some de-escalation, we'll go out and help bring them back down to center and try to get them connected to services. So maybe it's not like a 24, they need to go to PBH. Maybe it's, oh, you actually need treatment. We need to get you medically cleared to be able to do that. So how do we decipher what is what? So I think we're able to bring that to them. And then we're also able to connect them to even more community resources than they had in their pocket before. So we're connected to over like 80 agencies, and that it runs the gamut of like family services, insurance, treatment, to really anything anybody would need, because we want to provide that wraparound care, especially if you follow like Maslow's hierarchy of need. We need to make sure people have housing, food, clothing, and like some safety before we could even get to talking about change. So talking about getting help for their substance use disorder. So we try to mitigate the bottom part of that pyramid and work our way up. So they have sustainability and they're out of that crisis stage. And that's kind of what we also do when we work with other officers within the department. So we are working with like 3 different, I would say, departments within the police department now. Like CRT, kids. Yeah. So 3, sorry, listen, just make sure. So within those departments, we're working with the CIT team, so the critical crisis intervention. Wow, I know my job really well. Don't fire me. I know. I am bad at my job. No. We do the CRT team, crisis response team.
Negotiation team.
And the negotiation?
No, that's what CRT.
Okay, I didn't know that one either. And the Detectives Bureau. Nailed it. So we work with them, and so we're working with juveniles all the way up to, anybody who's not a juvenile, so any age we work with. So that's been really nice. They've been able to refer us for mental health calls. They've referred a bunch of juveniles recently. We just created that partnership like Monday. So we got a bunch of juveniles that we've been calling and trying to connect to services, because there's not a lot. There's none. There's no youth substance use treatment services in Allen County. So parents are at a loss for where to go next, and if they need residential placement because maybe they're having a severe mental illness, how do we get them placed somewhere that's safe and they can work on mental illness and substance use together. So how do we, because you can't, sometimes it's not the chicken or the egg in this instance, it's how do we work together, because there's always usually a trauma surrounding why somebody started using substances. So we build those bridges for officers and we build those bridges for the community, and then we do a bunch of other work. Do you want to talk about that? All the other stuff we do. Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Here.
In part.
Why don't you talk?
I don't.
Just stand up.
Maybe I don't, because I can talk loud. Yeah. Well, what's in your brain?
I was thinking like,
I will.
Please. Please.
Oh, sure.
like
Okay.
how we bridge the gap from the community to the officers.
Oh, sure.
Going out.
I'm gonna. It's a little close if I stand there. I'm very tall. I know you wouldn't understand that, but we love each other. I promise. So besides working directly with the officers and going out to houses or doing follow-up calls with the individuals who have like a mental health crisis going on along with substance use disorder, we also do the outreach, like Janet mentioned. So the Handing Out Hope once a month at the library, and then the weekly outreach here at Trinity. So that was something that we built this program as we came into it. So we weren't exactly sure what the community needed at the time, but after talking with community members, after talking with the clients that we started working with, we were like, what are you looking for? Like, what are your needs? What do you see that you need in the community? You know, what can we offer you? Kind of like an informal community needs assessment, instead of just like assuming what we think is good. We wanted to ask people with like lived experience, because they're going to be the experts on it, not us. So we do the outreach, and we realize that people who are experiencing homelessness often are also experiencing substance use disorder or mental illness. So they all kind of go hand in hand, and that's kind of how the outreach started. So at the monthly event, we have probably over 25 to 30 agencies that come every month, and they kind of switch out depending on who can come, who can't. We're connected with probably over, I don't even know, well, yeah, but for handing out hope, I think we've connected with like 60 people, and so from different agencies, and so, but we only have 19 tables to use. So I try to like take attendance every month, see who can actually make it, and then we share tables, et cetera. We just all kind of work together. But that is kind of a place where someone can come in and literally talk to 30 different agencies if they need to. So they can get all those services right there, meet them where they're at, you know, whatever tools we can give them, we want to give them, and then they get a free meal like we talked about with Same City. So that was the homelessness outreach, is how we've kind of connected to the community. At first, when we were going out on the streets and doing outreach, because we also do that on our weekly. So we have people here at Trinity, and then a few of us go to the rescue mission. And where else do we go in that little block? The Ave Maria House and St. Mary's Soup Kitchen. Okay, Ave Maria House and St. Mary's Soup Kitchen. So we just kind of walk around there with Asha from Project Me, and Positive Resource Connection goes out there too, and they offer their services as well. So we are basically, lost my train of thought. Why was I saying that?
Not sure. You were talking about connection to the community.
Oh, yes. At first, thank you. At first, we have our badges here. So it has our name on here, but it says police at the top. And so that kind of scared some people at first. It says social worker at the bottom, but they don't look at that first. They look at the police badge, and they look at the police star, and they're like, why are you here? You know, they were really hesitant at first. And so I think a really good positive that we have seen is that people now know us on the street, and they know that we're there to help them. We're not there to arrest them or get them in trouble or anything like that. We just truly want to meet them where they're at and give them the services that they want. And so after we kind of have built that rapport over time, they're not scared of us anymore. And we're building that connection and that rapport with the police department through us by doing that. So talking with these people in person, going to where they are, saying, yes, we do work with the police, but we are social workers and we're here to help, and the police officers are here to help too. So kind of mending that relationship with the homelessness population, I think, has been a really important positive that we have brought to the table just by going out in the streets and walking them. So what else do we do? Do you want to talk about like social media and stuff? Yeah. I am in charge of our social media. So we have a Facebook page, an Instagram page. So along with connecting with the community service providers that we talked about, the 80 plus that we have, we are doing like resource highlights every Monday. So I'm from Fort Wayne. I was born and raised here, but I was gone for schooling for about 7 years. And when I came back, Fort Wayne looked totally different. So it has changed rapidly in the last 10 years. And so even though I grew up here, I didn't know about the majority of the agencies here that offer connections to resources or that offer support. So I thought maybe, that might be a good idea to put that on social media to reach different age groups and reach a broader community with numbers and everything, because we can only see so many people in person. We can only call so many people and tell them about what's out there. But on Facebook, we've been able to reach over 40,000.
36,000.
Okay, 36,000 people just by posting on Facebook and people sharing it, and so every Monday we share a resource in the community. So that could be like Bowen Center, it could be Parkview, it could be Project Me, whatever it is. If it's related to some kind of social worky thing, we have put that out there. And so once a week we do that, and then we share on our personal pages and offer others to share that as well, and just share it with their people on their Facebook page, etc. Because we think just like we've talked about just breaking down those silos has been super important so we can all actually work together on something, because with the social work agencies that we work with, a lot of us have the same clients that we're trying to help the whole entire time. So if we can work together on an issue instead of just like sending them off and being like, well, this is my client, not yours, or whatever it is, it's not actually helpful for the person because they're not getting wraparound services. So we love to promote other agencies on there, and then we share, like when we have our outreach, we share, like for example, Recovery Cafe just did a little food pantry that they decorated, so we reshared that because like that's super positive for our community.
They're going to be one of our speakers next week.
Oh, great, yeah. So yeah, just stuff like that. Just trying to get the news out there for resources in Fort Wayne. Did I talk about everything?
You're all doing a very good job.
Okay.
Are we answering your questions?
You are. A lot of our,
Add one thing if I
please
could.
do.
You know, when we first started this program, the detectives who, well, stand up. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The detectives got tired of arresting the same people over and over again. So what we really have discovered over these last few years is if we could arrest our way out of this problem, we'd already be done with it. So that tells us we have to do something different. And this program is the something different that we have to do. So helping people, not arresting them.
Yes, that's a nugget,
Yes.
which we appreciate. Many of our people who are attending today are volunteers here at Trinity English, and that was when Rebecca and I started talking about this series. We very much wanted to help our volunteers gain awareness, understanding, additional empathy for our neighbors and what they are going through in several different circumstances that, because of our lived experience, we would not be able to understand or appreciate. And one of the terms, two terms that continually are being brought up, which I would like to make sure everyone is understanding, is how lived experience can lead to peer support. That's the first one. And because we talked a little bit about that last week, and peer recovery. So that's number one. And then number two, could you speak additionally about, and this is for the future also as you're adding staff to the HART team, when you talk about wrap-around services, can you give us some specifics, maybe even a story or two about an individual or individuals who have benefited specifically by this approach that the HART team uses with wraparound? So first, peer recovery and lived experience, and then the second question regarding wraparound.
So lived experience, I think, is, lived experience is super important when you're working with people because I don't know what it's like to be homeless, right? I don't know what it's like to be unhoused. I'm privileged in that way. So it's really nice to have somebody, and we do have people on our team for our street outreach, which was done purposefully, that have lived experience living in their cars and on the street here in Allen County. So how that has helped shape, so someone with lived experience can help shape the narrative that you use when you're providing services. So they can help tell you, this is what really works. This is where people hang out at, especially regarding homelessness. This is where people typically hang out at. This is where we need to go. This is what the real need is here, not X, Y, and Z. They need food. They need book bags we pass out. They need sleeping bags. They need tents. How do we help get those real things so they have that source of home? Right? So that's why we say unhoused a lot, because that could include a lot of people. So unhoused could include a kid who's couch surfing, who got kicked out of their family's home. It could include me, like if I needed a place to stay and I would crash at my mom's, but it's not my house. So, and it could be somebody who's living under the bridge here in Allen County. So it encompasses, or in a car. Like it encompasses a lot, because a home isn't a place, right? We say that a lot. It's your feeling. So if they feel at home in their tent, under Superior, you know, like on Superior Street, then who are we to take that away? How do we uplift them to get them and make a new home somewhere else, somewhere that feels safe? So someone with lived experience can help with that and with peer recovery. So if somebody who has used in the past and is in recovery can use their story to help motivate a lot of people who are actively using or who are also in their beginning steps of recovery. Right? So maybe I have 7 years of recovery. So maybe what I did won't work for, you know, John down the street. But hey, how about we try this avenue and this avenue and this avenue? And it opens a conversation of trust, transparency, understanding. So if you have that lived experience, a lot more trust is built kind of automatically because they know that you know where they were at. What was your other question?
Wraparound services.
Got it.
And including the part of the vision for what is yet to come with the HART team.
I was going to say a little bit more on the lived experience thing. So, so one more piece of the lived experience that I just wanted to mention is that when you don't have lived experience in a certain situation, there's room for stigma. So you don't have. Stigma is basically a fear-based mentality. If it's fear of the unknown, if you're not educated on the subject, if you don't have lived experience, there's a lot of room for stigma and hate. So learning how to talk to people with lived experience is super important. They might have a different language than we do, you know. They have different definitions of trust than we might have, or, you know, whatever it is. And instead of like othering ourselves, saying like, oh, you know, they are the homeless people that we help, it's like, you know, how can we help you? Like, you know more about the situation than I do. You are the expert. You know, I want to empower you to help me help you, kind of thing. So I just wanted to mention like the stigma piece because I think that's really important.
That's what this whole series is about. So good one.
Yeah.
You know,
Crushed it.
I would add to that, you know, it's really important to ask a person that you're helping what their story is, because everybody has a story and everybody carries baggage with them. So hearing that story is very powerful, not just for us, but for that person also, because maybe they've never told their story to anybody before. And by getting that out there, that's helpful. So
as volunteers and as our partners in being present with our neighbors, that is a huge takeaway. Sometimes we just begin with, we're so glad that you're here, and how's your day going today? Something that's a little step. And then if that opens a little bit more opportunity, we can say, would you be willing to share your story with me? And that's the kind of question we can ask over time, such as we get to know our neighbors at the Wednesday lunches. Because so often, as we said last week, we can call many of our neighbors by name now, and they know our names. And that's when we can open that opportunity for further questioning a little bit as trust grows. So we definitely are looking for that. And Sam, I wanted to thank you for talking about that fear-based mentality, that when we have stigma and we are operating out of stigma when we use language like those homeless people, we're not allowing room for there to be an awareness, an appreciation, understanding, a softness to say, this is one person I'm getting to know who has a story. And because I would never want to be included, for example, in a cluster group of those short people. I'm not going to say anything more about that right now. So as we're talking about wraparound services, we always want to think about people as human beings, and we care about them in all ways, but especially attending to needs of body, mind, and spirit. However that person identifies what his or her or their sense of spirituality might be, or however they identify in terms of his or her or their gender, etc. So as we get to know people's stories, we begin to use and continue to use respectful language So the story piece is so important. And looking at then, of course, trying to get away from language that clusters people by what seem to be like circumstances but can be very different. So why the need for what are referred to as wrap-around services? And if you can, again, give maybe a couple of examples of real stories, and also how that presents itself in this community, those opportunities, and maybe a little bit about how Trinity is part of maybe a wrap-around opportunity.
Yeah, you might have to remind me of some of those.
No
I'm gonna
problem, I got
start
it.
And then, so with wraparound services, Darcy mentioned the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Who is familiar with that? Raise our
Asha talked
hands.
about them last week.
Perfect. I honestly feel like you could have a whole session on just that.
I know, I wrote
Like,
it down as a
yeah,
possible topic.
just that
yeah.
little pyramid, because that's just so important. I mean, that's Maslow did a great job. So if someone does not have the very bottom of the pyramid met, they can't move on to the next step of the pyramid, or it's very hard to sustain that next step of the pyramid. They might be able to move on to the next step, but it's not going to be sustainable. So those basic needs, the food, shelter, clothing, stuff like that, that might be one service that someone needs. So once we get them shelter, clothing, food. Okay, so now what's the next step? Like, where are you at in your substance use recovery journey? Where are you at with your mental health journey? You know, do you need a psych eval? Do you need to get a correct diagnosis? Okay, that might be a next step. Then once we have that, we might be able to get you on the correct medication. Okay, so that's a next step. That's another person. So there's an assessment worker. There is, you know, someone who provides clothing and food. There is the psychiatrist who prescribes the medication. Then after you get the medication, there's counseling and therapy. So there's another person involved in that process. So that right there is already going to take months to do, you know.
And people may revisit
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
that ground level, if you want to call
Yeah.
it that base level.
Yeah. Yeah, because they might get those needs and then they lose their shelter again. So then we have to like go back to square one, do those services again. So, you know, once they have the counseling and therapy down, okay, so now you need to sustain your housing or shelter. You need to pay for that. Okay, can you sustain a job? If you can't sustain a job, do you need help with sign up for disability services, et cetera? So the list could go on forever. And so starting at the basic level and working your way up, wrap around, just means you are wrapping that person like a hug with all the services possible that they need. And that can, like, you know, you said it can be cyclical. It can, you might have to restart. You might have to try a different therapist or a different medication. There's lots of vulnerability when it comes to that. So that describes wraparound services,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so what was the next part of the question?
As the HART team continues to grow, what areas are you seeing that you are wanting additional personnel for regarding wraparound services and the need for that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to talk about the new social?
Yes, thank you. So I have spoken to so many parents who have lost a loved one to an overdose. And as a result, we wrote a grant and we are in the process of hiring another master's level social worker to go out and talk to families after they lose a loved one from an overdose and provide grief services to that family. With the idea that, you know, there might also be substance use disorder within that family, so that person can connect the family to Sam and Darcy and Jeff and Jeremy as well. So we have really a full spectrum of services to be able to provide somebody going through that horrible, horrible situation. That's the next step. That person actually starts their job on April 3rd. So I'm really excited about that.
And so are we.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And at some point, we will take volunteers to help that social worker go out and talk to families. So if anybody is interested, at some point, we'll put a call out for volunteers.
What will that new professional's title be?
We're calling it the Overdose Loss Social Worker. And it's actually going to be called Overdose Loss Team.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I thought of another thing. You said family.
Yes.
And oftentimes there are other family members who are struggling with the same things. So a lot of times it's a generational pattern. So when we talk about wraparound services, one thing we can also do is work with the whole family. We forgot to mention that. So we forget this sometimes. So not only can we work with juveniles, and a lot of people cannot, they have to be 18 and over, we can also work with the whole family. So the whole family is affected by these situations. So not only can we provide wraparound services for the individual, but also for the whole family and everyone who's involved in that situation too. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because it's usually a familial problem or a challenge that they have been exposed to their whole life. So.
Right. So are you beginning to hear some of the differences in the HART team's approach to interacting with individuals, families, systems, overall needs, including the very basic needs of life, that this team, including our officers, Jeff and Jeremy, who couldn't be here today, but we'll get them here another time. We can be relentless. I do think it's interesting to see these patterns, though, because we're not just addressing the need of the moment and incarcerating someone to have that need of the moment cared for, because the need of the moment really isn't the need of the moment. So as the HART team then is looking at whole person needs, whole person care, whole family care, that really is a defining difference, isn't it? Are there any other differences between general efforts of the police department and the HART team that you can think of? And then I have a follow-up question for that.
Well, so the patrol officers are very, very busy. They're going from run to run to run to run. The HART program, we can take our time and we can spend time with those people that really need our services and revisit and call them back on numerous days. One case, how many contacts did you have?
I have 152 and counting.
With one family.
I know that family.
So that's the beauty of this program, is that we can spend time to really help address those issues and it just not doing hit and run services.
One and
Does
done.
that make sense?
Yes, one and done.
Yes, yes. We're not one and done.
So as volunteers, as many of you are, we had a situation this morning arise, and Darcy answered our call. I was not the one who placed the call. It was Laura at our front desk. And we had a distinction made by Darcy about when to call the HART team and when to call the police department. Because generally, we like calling the HART team.
Super fun.
You are fun. You're also nice to me. And all of our officers have been great, truly without exception. But for a volunteer purpose, let's say community dinner, a community dinner volunteer or a noon lunch volunteer, or someone who is having maybe a crisis in their neighborhood, or someone who is presenting as struggling and is perhaps a danger to him or herself or others. Could you please walk us through the distinction of when to call whom?
Yeah. So if somebody, okay, hold on. Let me start over. We are not a crisis service line. That's a big distinction. We can be called out, or we can be called, and then, like, let's say John in your neighborhood, I think he has a lot of alcohol bottles. I'm really worried about him. He's not mowing his lawn, or he's not taking care of things. It's getting dirty. Whatever you kind of see, I'm concerned. That stuff you can call us for. Like, I'm just worried about John. And we can kind of go check on him, see if he's like maybe he just needs some help. Maybe he needs a service. Maybe he needs something else.
Or medical care?
Medical care, we can make a report for adult protective services to come out, things like that. But if it's a crisis, like you see John running down your street nude, that's when you call 911.
By all means, do not call the HART team.
Please do not call me. You call the 911 and they'll send an officer and they'll do an evaluation on that person. So maybe John had too much to drink. Maybe John is going through a mental illness or a mental health crisis. Like, what is going on? They'll be able to evaluate him and take them to Parkview Behavioral. So that we don't do. We don't do evaluations for the police department. Our detectives can. They're trained. But we try to not do that. We try to get them out of that crisis and into sustainability. So most of the time, it's a lot of safety planning. We don't need to take them in. Because our officers do that stuff. Also, if it's somebody like that keeps coming around your house, call 911. Don't call us. So just call us if you're really worried. I'm concerned that maybe somebody in the church might be using, or somebody outside of the church. Hey, I've seen this guy. He's hanging out. We would really like to see if we can meet up with him. Have you guys come out and see if you can find him. We've done that before. You had somebody living behind your garbage area. And so we went out and tried to find them and they had already left. So we'll do that stuff for sure, but we are not an emergent crisis call. We'll go out because we have over 700 people that we've worked with, and we are continuing to get more every day. So we just can't go out. And the officers are working like 500 jobs at one time, so it's hard to get our schedules to coordinate. Did that help?
Yes, it does help. Now, let's just say, John.
Yeah. John's doing a lot.
And many of us, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. We have connections with people who have descriptors such as John. And situations that we've described today. On one day, it might be appropriate for this individual to call the HART team because this individual might be sleeping on our premises, and some of our staff have gotten to know him, some of our volunteers have gotten to know him. On the other hand, maybe another day, there's threatening behavior, or there is the individual is presenting as being more dangerous to himself or someone else. So there are variables in those kinds of things. And we really try to be present for our volunteers, our staff. If you have questions and I'm in the building, please call me. If Laura can answer a lot of these questions, our pastors are very equipped to do this. We really try to take each person on a day-by-day, sometimes on a moment-by-moment basis. But the bottom line is, however we proceed, our goal is to help keep people safe, including the people who are in the building and the people who are outside the building. But that's always our goal, is everyone's safety. And we want to be compassionate, not just have a one-and-done moment and have the situation be gone. Because the situation might not be in our visible awareness, but we know that over time those situations may reoccur. So I do want to make sure we leave a little bit more time for questions and answers. But as we are moving forward with our discussion about the HART team and working to meet the needs of our community for their mental and behavioral health, and when we talk about behavioral health, that includes substance use disorder, some other things that you can think of?
Yeah, so behavioral health is a lot of things. So it could include the mental illness, but it's usually substance use disorder, it's suicidal thoughts and ideation, it's self-harm, it could be a plethora of things.
So sometimes you'll hear that expression, mental and behavioral health. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
That's a lot, but so often they coexist with the same person or the same household. When you say that you work with families, when we're talking about mental and behavioral health, and there is perhaps criminal activity or self-harm activity, etc., when there are children in the picture, because you work with juveniles and up, but when there are children involved in the situation, and we know that so often that is the case, as we have generations living under one roof, commonly in this community, multiple generations. How does the HART team approach situations like that when children are involved?
Yeah. That is a great question. I think honestly because we are the ones doing the follow-ups afterwards, so we are not handling the current crisis in the beginning. So let's say an officer has to go out to a home. It's a CIT call, a crisis call, and it's a single mom, and the mom has 3 younger kids, but she needs to go to PBH. If there is not
Parkview Behavioral Health
Sorry.
Hospital? Okay.
Yes, for a 24-hour hold, just to get the help that she needs. DCS will most likely be called, obviously, because the kids need to be taken care of. So once DCS is called, if they can find an adult or a guardian who is either kinship placement, so that means someone who is maybe not blood related, but their neighbor that they trust, or a family friend that they know that can take those kids, then DCS figures that out and they're on their way. Let's say there's no one that can take them, then obviously DCS does get involved in a case, and they make sure those children are safe while the parent handles their mental health. So we wouldn't typically deal with that right on the front end because we don't do the crisis call. But we are mandated reporters, so if something does pop up when we are talking to a family, then of course we do have to report. So I guess I wanted to say that first because we're not the ones who are going to figure out where the kid is going to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if there is multiple adults in the home and there's only one adult that needs mental health care and the kids are taken care of, etc. But if they're exposed to like a traumatic event, so like let's say that one of their parents or an adult in the home has suicidal ideation, or they self-harm, and they have to go to the hospital, and that was a traumatic event for them, we can get them set up with mental health resources for the kids. So kids can still go to therapy. They have play therapy, even for really young kids, like 5 and under, stuff like that. So we can help get them connected to those services. I think like the next section, maybe if there is a parent that passes away. So maybe there is a fatal overdose in the home. That child is exposed to it. They're not only going to need therapy services, but they're also going to need grief support. So we have, resources for that as well for kids and teens and adults. So
Excellent.
did that answer the question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you. And Captain Hunter, I just had a question for you, but it just went one ear and out the other.
Okay.
Brain, yeah, it's catching. I know that we did want to address this issue. When we are talking about providing services for people who are unhoused, and I really want to reiterate that distinction between homeless and unhoused, that's a whole mindset change, isn't it? That's very helpful to me to start using the term unhoused versus a person experiencing homelessness, because a home is many different kinds of things. Thank you for clarifying that for us. That's language that we can get used to, I think. When we're talking about persons who are unhoused and their risks for living in safety in many ways, including the possibility of, well, last week we heard a lot about people who are at risk because of addiction and exposure to bacteria or dirty needles or many other things that put them at additional risk. How does the HART team address some of those issues that do put people at greater risk because of their being unhoused? What are some strategies, other than obviously continuing to build community and a sense of trust? Are there some specific strategies that you have through social work and also with the detectives that they might use specifically when interacting with individuals who are unhoused?
Well, we try to practice harm reduction techniques, so that's huge for us. So let's say somebody is using intravenous needles for their drugs. Referring them to the syringe service program would be something we could do. We might even take them to that syringe service program, which would be helpful. I mean, that again is trying to reduce harm for that person, and that's important for us.
Mm-hmm. We heard a lot about harm reduction last week, didn't we? And the role of, one of the great differences we see now with how we interact at Trinity English, in city ministry especially, with the HART team versus how we previously interacted with the police department, is that if we had someone experiencing what I would describe as a crisis, because it meant that the person felt or revealed behavior that seemed as though they were feeling out of control. They were seeking help. They wanted to go to the hospital, or they wanted to go to Park Center or whatever. We did not have a means by which to accomplish that in the past, but we do now. Could you tell us a little bit about the importance of that, Sam? That why, or Captain, perhaps you might address that differently.
I was going to say something.
I saw the deer in headlights, sorry.
Well, I had my speech. I was ready for harm reduction stuff. So.
We'll do that next.
Okay.
So we're very fortunate that we can transport people anywhere. So the HART program just went through an evaluation process yesterday, and what we discovered is we're one of the very rare organizations that are doing this kind of work that are actually allowed to transport people to different things. I mean, I've taken people to JobWorks program, taken people to treatment. We've taken people to different treatment places around the state, not just here in Allen County. We have that luxury. So that is pretty rare from what I understand. So that's the beauty, again, another beauty of this program, that we can help people get them to where they need to go to get the help that they need.
Right. And I was part of the meeting yesterday for evaluating the HART team. It was, what is the Indiana umbrella?
Department of Mental Health and Addiction.
Okay. And then there's, for this grant, there's a
Yes.
different term that's used statewide.
Oh, it's, what is it?
I don't know.
Oh,
I said tested.
no, it's also Family and Social Service Administration.
Right. It doesn't matter really that
Okay.
much. But one thing I would like to share is that I didn't know what to expect in that meeting. There were a lot of representatives from addiction and recovery agencies, social service partners, and the message around the big table at the Lutheran Foundation was absolutely consistent. If the HART team didn't exist and provide the personalized, compassionate community services and compassionate accompaniment that you do, all of these agencies wouldn't be receiving many of their clients and helping people to not die by addiction or other challenges, because there wasn't that safe transportation piece. So that is huge. It's huge, and it does reveal the philosophy of your program. I think it really does. Sam, you were going to speak about, and we thank you for that, by the way. Sam, you were going to speak a little bit more about harm reduction.
Yeah, you just mentioned like the vulnerability piece of someone who is unhoused. And so I was just thinking about, well, one, we pass out Narcan as well. Mm-hmm. So, but I also wanted to talk about, people who are unhoused, whether they're living in the streets, their car, wherever they are, they're exposed to a lot. And there's a lot of trauma that goes with that. And so a lot of times, I'm not sure if we all think about this a lot, but to cope with that would be very difficult. And sometimes people are coping by using substances. So if, that is something that they are doing to cope with the vulnerability and with the trauma that they experience every day. And so that's why I think harm reduction is so important, because if we take away that coping skill because we think it's better for them, that's not fair, So I don't know. I just think that's an important philosophy, yeah, and just piece to it. We don't know better than they do about their own life. So passing out Narcan, I think, is awesome. It saves lives, as we know. And also, sometimes if they don't want to take it, we just say, well, it could be for a friend, or if you see someone on the street who might need it, it's good just to have it on you. Like, I always have it on me, et cetera. And I think that kind of takes away the stigma piece, the fear that we're going to judge them piece, et cetera. So that's, yeah. harm reduction just kind of ties in. I just wanted to mention that.
It's become a real theme for our series.
Yeah, I bet.
It really has, hasn't it?
If you don't mind. So, let's see, 2021, we had 1,224 non-fatal overdoses. Last year, we reduced that by 28% because of all the Narcan that's being distributed in the community. And that, again, that's awesome. We're definitely saving lives with that.
As I said, our speakers last week were Asha with Project Me
Yes.
and Positive, yes, with Melissa, yes, Vanessa with Positive Resource Connection. And the question was asked, who should have Narcan? What was the answer? Everybody. Because we just don't know when someone in our neighborhood, here or at home, or when we are at a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, might go unconscious, or it might be revealed to us that that person has overdosed. We don't want anybody to die. And that's the philosophy behind that. So we can connect you with Asha. We do have Narcan on the premises, and we are going to be having an official training for that. We'll make you all aware of that. That'll be in our newsletter. By the way, upcoming trainings will be on the website, so we have several that are going to be happening soon. Keep your eyes out for those, please. We really do want to help everybody feel equipped in many ways to accompany our neighbors. Let's take some time to ask some questions, and let's try, if we can, to limit our questions to the HART team in Fort Wayne, et cetera.
First, you're getting up and down very well, so you must be doing technically. Very good. I just noticed that. I wanted to mention that. I have two things, one a comment and one a question. I really did appreciate that tie between the lived experience and the stigma thing, because not having some of the real connection there, but in realizing that the stigma, sometimes you realize that, but then putting it into words, how that all kind of ties together, really, you realize the more you work with it, and these sessions have been amazing to really kind of help break through a lot of that. So, and you guys, congratulations on your 7 years too, by the way. Those kind of things are just very helpful to continue hearing these sessions. It's great to hear that too. So, but my question is, all this jail question, it's not on the building of the jail or anything along those lines, but what it has brought up is the mental illness facet of it. And my question is Kevin, you had brought up the detectives just got tired of arresting people over and over again.
Yes.
And knowing that, or hearing in this whole jail discussion, what a lot of the arrests are, and of course we all know that mental health and behavioral health is behind a lot of these kind of arrests.
Yes.
Is this program, what kind of things are starting to come together behind the scenes that we're not hearing about, hopefully? Is there anything that's starting to tie some of what your team is doing to potentially what could help in the jail population? Is there anything, am I making sense? Anything that's tying that together that might be helping out in the two areas?
I've been a real advocate for a program called the Jail Chemical Addiction Program.
Captain, can you stand up and say that again?
Yes. I've been a real advocate for a program called the Jail Chemical Addiction Program. Then Attorney General Curtis Hill fostered a program throughout the state where they gave money to jails to create treatment programs within their jail. And recently, in the last year, the Allen County Jail started a JCAP program, and they're on their second class right now, I think. Is that correct?
They're on their second.
Third? Second. Okay, good. Second class. And that's really beneficial for this area because, first of all, you have the facility, you have people who are a captive audience, and they're not doing anything else, and they're suffering from substance use disorder. Why not give them the treatment they need while they're incarcerated? It's a win-win.
And seeing that there's some, the program that Judge Gull is a part of.
Yes.
How successful that seems to be.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And then in conjunction with that, all the other pieces that you guys go through with this, with the families and everything
Yes.
else, it seems like it's a bigger picture than just that maybe somebody can pick up on what you guys are doing that and take that program in addition to incarcerations
Yes.
and.
Everything is connected. So having connections to the courts and to the jail and to all of these different entities, we all should be working together. We should not be working in silos because silos don't help anybody.
Yeah, because you guys, it doesn't really come down to that as far as, because I know you do a lot of grants, and it still comes down to state funding and that
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes. Did that answer your
I
question?
think so, yeah, because you guys, your program is really, it's fascinating.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you.
Yeah, we're very proud of it.
Two
Doug,
questions.
yes.
First is, how do you contact the heart team?
Imagine that. Do we have cards?
I didn't bring them.
But
You have them in the car, though.
may I address some of this for our volunteers? If you're working at community dinner, the HART team's contact information is by the toaster,
Okay.
by design. There we go. They also, there is a sign by the front desk, and it says HART, and it's got the same blue and red letters, and it's right there. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. I'm glad you brought that up because that was a fleeting thought. Tell us a little bit, Darcy, when people call the HART team's number, what if someone doesn't answer? What do we do then?
Okay, so you call the heart team. You're like, hey. So it'll automatically go to a voicemail. Do not be alarmed. Leave your voicemail with your name, number, and why you need our assistance so we can kind of know what's going on before we call. And then it gets emailed out. We get an email that says voicemail, and Captain Hunter gets it. We get it, the detectives get it, and a Parkview peer recovery coach gets it. You will be called within 15 minutes. That's the goal of your call. So one of us, as the team, will listen. Who's the best to serve the situation? It's typically us that call back, and then Parkview also, and then we'll go from there and see what we need to do.
So, leave a message.
Please, after the beep.
That's important, after the beep.
Yes.
My second question is demographics of people, victims of opioid crisis. And my first thought on that was about age range. And I was, and early on in the conversation, somebody made a comment about lack of services for adolescents.
Yes.
And I'm curious about.
So a few years ago, the health department did a study. They found that the average person suffering from opioid use disorder was a 41-year-old male white who was gainfully employed. What we're seeing now is kids, what's the youngest that we've had? So we're seeing younger and younger kids get a hold of these counterfeit Percocet pills and overdose. So the problem is getting younger and younger, unfortunately.
And the pills, am I correct in understanding, the pills are often looking more and more like candy?
So they're different. So there's a new version out that looks like the same colors as the Flintstone chewable vitamins. So yellow, green, blue, we've seen it all. But the pills are such a problem. In 2021, the Fort Wayne Police Department seized 11,000 counterfeit pills. Last year, we seized 98,000. So that's such a huge increase, and the streets are just flooded with those drugs. So it's a real problem.
And a person who is trying a drug for the first time and thinks, this is innocuous enough.
They think it's a pharmaceutical grade pill, which it's not. There's no pharmaceutical grade pills out on the street. It's all counterfeit.
Right, and laced with,
Fentanyl and even something called xylazine, which is a animal tranquilizer that is a central nervous system depressant that when you put those two together, that can be very deadly.
Asha talked about that last week.
Yes, ma'am.
How about in the schools, grade schools, middle schools, high schools, what is the prevalence there of these drugs?
We see a little bit of the fentanyl, but what we really see more of is the vaping of the THC products. That's been really huge lately. And the THC content is so high in these products that some of these kids are passing out as a result of taking those drugs. So the question is, is it laced with fentanyl? Most likely not, because we've tested a lot of products that we've been told, this marijuana was laced with fentanyl. We have not found that to be the case yet. But it's just really, really very high concentration THC.
So where Narcan? Schools?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of other scenarios. That's why we should keep it with us.
So we just had a discussion a week ago, 2 weeks ago, at the AMP lab.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was that two weeks ago? There are students in Fort Wayne Community Schools that are working on a project to get Narcan out into the schools. Not just the nurses, but teachers and students as well. And I'm really excited about that project.
Generated by young people.
Generated by, students.
Led by teens, that's so.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes.
Can I ask the big question up
Sure.
here, and then there's the nuanced, more sensitive follow-up to it. How do we, as community members, as people who care, how do we support you as the heart recovery team, or the heart team? The more sensitive and nuanced to that, and the challenging piece is what did I write down? How do we hold space and address the fact that because the officers are involved, and because the police are a part of this, and the narrative and as objective as I can possibly be about that, it's not right or wrong, false or accurate. It's all of the things that in some cases are very real and very sensitive for so many parts and pieces of our communities. How are you working through that? You touched on it briefly, kind of about, how people see your badge and they say no. How do we support that in our narrative about what you are doing, and especially because the Fort Wayne Police Department is doing this incredible thing? What is the best way in the narrative and the words and the things that open these services and open these to people who may have very real reservations for any number of reasons?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. Here's what I would say. Tell all your family and friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family and friends that live in other areas, hey, this is what we have going on here. Maybe your organization in your city should be doing the same thing. By spreading that message, that's really, really powerful, because hearing what good is coming of this program, other agencies will want to have that as well. So police departments sometimes don't always get the good press, even though they may do good work. We know we're doing good work, and that message is getting out. But it's helpful if everybody spreads that message, not only to neighbors and friends, but also social media as well. Did I miss anything?
How do you address anybody who might be worried about a bait and switch? Somebody who says, they will care for me until they find out I'm a user, or until they find out I'm not.
So
how do you address that?
initially when we started the program, the other officers were not complimentary of Jeff and Jeremy. They were called Hug-a-Thug program.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
However, as time has gone on, these same officers are calling Jeff and Jeremy and Sam and Darcy and saying, I have an aunt or uncle, I have a brother or sister that needs help. Can you help them? And then so we're getting more and more referrals, personal referrals, but then, hey, I just met this guy the other day, he really needs some help. Can you help him? So that has gotten much better, the internal referrals as well.
May I ask, related to that, and I was going to ask this earlier, within the Fort Wayne Police Department, do you have any designated responsibilities for, I'm going to use the word informing, sharing with, answering questions with and for other officers?
So you mean, could you be more specific?
Are other officers encouraged to use a model such as the HART Team's model, where it's the philosophy being get people into a safe situation versus incarcerate them? Is there any overlap with what you do and the
Yes.
philosophy of the rest of the police department?
So one thing that we can always do a better job of is explaining to all the officers that one of their biggest tools is the power of discretion. So in the Fort Wayne Police Department, there are only two situations that I absolutely must arrest somebody. One is a domestic violence situation, and the second is a drunk driving case. Everything else, I can use my discretion whether I arrest that person or not. So having meaningful referrals like the HART program. So let's say I stop somebody and they have a syringe, no other drugs, but a syringe is a level 6 felony. I can say, you know what? I'm going to throw away this syringe, but I want you to talk to the Hope and Recovery team. How does that sound? Mm-hmm. And that's a meaningful referral that hopefully will help that person instead of arrest.
Yes.
So did that answer your question?
It did.
Did you have anything else with that one? Because I wanted to go back a step.
I would like to open that one up. Does anybody else have a question relevant to that last discussion about how the HART Team's philosophy does or does not affect the rest of the policing strategies and approaches in the community? Okay, all yours.
So I wanted to speak. I don't know your name, and your hair is. Hi.
Me. Hi, I'm Amy.
Hi, Amy. I wanted to comment on your question as well. It seems like you just have a ton of empathy, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. Like, I feel that coming from you. And I love that. Like, I love the wanting to help so badly, you know what I mean? And so, like Captain Hunter said, like, definitely spreading that word, educating people as much as you can. And then also knowing, just like for yourself, that if someone doesn't want help, we can't force them.
Right.
And so, you know, and maybe that you weren't thinking that, but to the whole room, just wanted to say that in general. We can do as much as we possibly can, but if someone is not wanting the help, we can't force them. And if we do force them, it is not successful. And we have seen that just through statistics. So knowing that in our hearts, as long as we educate, we give them the tools to maybe give us a call or, you know, whatever it is. But if they are still fearful of us, you know, that is okay. Maybe eventually they won't be. Maybe at some point their friend gets help from us and they're like, oh, okay, that is proving to me that maybe I can reach out, you know, et cetera. So I just wanted to say that because we can't force anybody, but as long as we educate and give them the necessary information that they might need later on, I think that's all we can really do. Yeah.
Part of, I think, one way to approach that, the trust level, is that Darcy and Sam are available every single Wednesday at our street outreach and also the Handing Out Hope event. And so are several of our volunteers in this room. Sylvia and Sherry Yeoman and Cindy Douglas and a couple of others are consistently available when Darcy and Sam are here. Yeah. And I wanted to share a 40-second story that happened today. I will warn you. One of our volunteers was working at our Open Doors opportunity today. And she is known for engaging people kind of, you know, just a really unconditional, loving way by saying, how you doing today? And great to see you. Very affirming. And this is a person who has tremendous empathy also. She encountered someone today at our Open Doors event, and the person did not really want to come inside. That's all good, no problem. but the person expressed 3 or 4 different levels of need that were needs that were emergency type needs. And so she said, can you come here next Wednesday? Meet me here next Wednesday. I will walk with you across the street, and I will introduce you to Sam and Darcy, and I will take you to the tables that help you get what you need. That's companionship 101, right? For those people in the room who've had the companionship training, which is coming, by the way, the first week of April. Thank you to Carol Turkula, who will help to lead that here at Trinity English from the Lutheran Foundation. We're so glad you're going to be a part of that process. But that is the bottom line about what is our role. We cannot force people. We can be frustrated. We can be angry about systemic issues, etc. But when Darcy and Sam and Captain Hunter and Jeff and Jeremy make themselves consistently available on Wednesdays and at other times, and people in the community begin to consistently see their faces associated with compassionate outreach, such as the meal on Wednesday, handing out hope, street outreach, those kind of things, that builds trust. And you are there. You are there to help build that trust in those relationships. And that's how people like our volunteers can connect and take the lead from you on how to walk alongside, literally, how to walk alongside people who are maybe a little bit distrustful of agencies and social service programs and the police department, to help them feel safe in doing so. So if you ever have someone that you encounter here or in the community or your neighborhood or your family, and you want to walk alongside them, come and have a conversation with us. Or if you want to call Sam and Darcy or come and talk with them on Wednesday, it's very easy to do. And they are so accessible and available. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Pastor Ernest, would you like to comment a little bit about how the HART team has helped to shape what we're doing here?
Yeah, I wanted to specifically thank you for being here. Trinity, as we all know, I mean, Trinity's a church, and there's a lot of goofy things about the church. And it just is, right? It can be a goofy
Try
kind
not
of...
to lead with that.
I mean, we need to acknowledge, I mean, there can be a lot of goofy things about church. I mean, in a lot of different ways. It's a collection of human beings, right? Who, for whatever reason, have chosen to be together, right? But we, at least here, we're in a unique location. And at least here, we've tried to take seriously that location gives us a unique sense of responsibility to parts of our city that maybe some other church that's located some other part of the city doesn't have responsibility for, but that we do because we're here. And we recognize that it would be easy and sometimes safer for you all not to be connected to a church because it does come with some baggage and some things for a lot of people, kind of like a badge can come, you know, and so, but your willingness to be here and help us do what we think is our work for the people of this city, it really means a lot to me. You know,
I would say you mean a lot.
Yeah.
I consider us partners,
Yeah.
and we couldn't do this without you. So again, thank you all for being a part of this.
I mean, in many, many ways, you know, we could draw, you know, the work that you do is in that sense kind of similar to the work that we try to do. You can't make anybody go to church, right? You can't make, like, if you come and you come to dinner, but you can only come if you come to church, that's really, you know, that's kind of, you know, in the same way as your work, you can't make somebody go to recovery. We can't make somebody like Jesus, right? But hopefully by embodying that in a lot of variety of ways, somebody may, in their way, find recovery, find their lives they find Jesus, that's kind of a nice thing, but, so really to.
We love you for that.
I mean, you can't make kids go to church even, so, it doesn't really work, so, I mean, in that sense, we're kind of in parallel projects together.
Well, and obviously, with all of our programs, for however that reveals itself from Trinity English's perspective, we lead with love. Because that's how we roll.
Well, Janet does, because she likes people.
But the list is getting shorter. No, it's just not my first joke.
I'm withholding my judgment for a while.
Well, for those of us who do connect to God spiritually through Jesus and through other means, I would ask us all to keep a space in our heart for the safety and the well-being of the HART team, for all that you are doing and all that you have done and will do. We ask God's continued blessings on your efforts, and thank you for your good hearts. You knew it was coming. But also, we hope you will continue to see us as your partners, and however, as Amy asked, however we can in our tradition offer prayer, however we can be more fully present with our community. If there's language that we can use that is more helpful than others, let's call it out. And because we are about not just reducing stigma. I want to eliminate it. And we can do that.
Amen.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. Thank you, Captain. So glad you could come.